Do you seek the freedom to pursue greater meaning and purpose in your life? Is there something that you're passionate about that you'd like to support by giving time, talent, or money? Do you seek a level of financial freedom to live an ideal life as you uniquely define it? Welcome to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to helping you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most.
Welcome to another episode of the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier. My name is Mike Bernard, and I am the host and moderator of the show today. So glad to have you with us. I am a certified financial planner, just like Jeff, and have been a friend and a collaborator with Jeff for many years. And I'm so glad to be part of this project, as I believe Jeff has the unique ability to balance high-level wealth management advice with his calling to help people live a life of meaning and purpose. Last month, we provided some encouragement for you to examine what really matters most, what your rocks are in life, and give you a process to help you uncover it. This month, we're going to explore the great goals of life, which is going to be exciting. Jeff Bernier is the founder, president, and chief investment officer of Tandem Growth Financial Advisors, a wealth management firm in Alpharetta, Georgia, a suburb in the greater Atlanta area. Jeff, before we dive in, thoughts from last month's episode?
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to you and the team here at the Korhorn Financial Group for the opportunity to use your resources and put these shows together. Last month I spoke a bit about how this show is a collaboration between us and the audience.
Yeah.
But it's also a collaboration between Tandem Growth Financial Advisors and my friends here at KFG. So thank you for encouraging me in this endeavor. I also want to remind the audience that if they missed the first two episodes, they are available on the Money and Meaning section of the Tandem Growth website, www.tandemgrowth.com. In the first month's episode, we gave a general introduction of the show. Last month, as you mentioned, we talked a little bit about what matters most with some good questions to ponder. So I encourage listeners to go back and check those out if they haven't listened to them yet.
That's right. They're not intended to be overwhelming. They're not intended to be very lengthy, very long. I listened to one podcast where he'll go anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. And no, that's not. These are quick bursts, as Jeff said last time, quick bursts of thoughtfulness as you consider how to approach your life, how to approach your financial life. So,
correct.
I know today you wanted to have a discussion around what you call the great great goals of life. What's the motivation around today's topic, talking about that?
Yeah, next month, April Fool's Day, appropriately enough, I'll be getting my 33rd year serving clients in the wealth management industry. And something that I've realized in these 32 years is the simplest ideas are oftentimes the best. There's just a lot of wisdom and actually a lot of sophistication in using simple, understandable concepts. And so editing things down to their essential wisdom is not an easy task and something, I actually struggle with. So I spent a lot of my career thinking that I had to have this big, complex advice. I had to have a big, giant, long financial plan with a lot of charts and graphs. And oftentimes, again, it really just gets down to the more essential, elemental things that really drive behavior and drive results. So really, this topic is what are some of those key elements? What are the key elements? So even though they sound quite simple in some respects, I think they're elegant questions that are really important from a financial planning context.
Those of you listening who are in the greater Atlanta area, you'll recognize this name. One of my favorite pastors is Andy Stanley, and you might not have heard of him. You probably have. You might like him. You might not. But I listened to a series from him before, and he started by saying, I have a bad reputation. Some people look at me and they listen to me and they say I'm not very smart, and it's because I'm clear. And what's hilarious is everyone just starts clapping. He's known for taking the very simple, but really the essential questions in life and communicating it very clearly. That's what you're talking about here today.
Correct.
So where'd the idea come from that people have common goals?
Yeah, many years ago, I saw Ron Blue make a presentation. Now, Ron Blue was the founder and CEO at the time of Ron Blue and Company, a large, national wealth management company that basically does biblically based advice.
Yep.
And he had left the firm at that point and had started a new endeavor. But he taught at this session I went to that there's really only 5 things you can do with your money, and there's really only 6 major long-term goals. And that sounds quite simplistic, but let me go through these. So he said that only 5 things you can do with your money. You can give it away, number 1. Number 2, you can use it for lifestyle, living expenses. Number 3, you can use it to pay debt. Number 4, you have to pay taxes at some level. And then finally, you could save and invest it, which is really just deferring it to do maybe one of these other things in the future.
Simple but accurate. That's
Correct.
it.
Correct. So almost everything you can think about with your resources, those are the 5 things. So he said there's 5 things you can do with your money, and there's really only 6 major long-term goals. And he defined those as number 1, financial independence. Number 2, charitable giving, influencing society in a meaningful way. Number 3, being free from debt. Number 4, improving your lifestyle or maintaining your present lifestyle, perhaps. Number 5, transitioning to a new business or career. And number 6, education or gifts to children or grandchildren. So almost any goal, any granular goal that you can think of could fit in one of these 6 areas. So it seems to me that good financial planning is really helping you allocate your resources into these various buckets.
Prioritizing and allocating them appropriately. Absolutely.
That's right. That's exactly right. So building a plan is really about how you allocate it between these goals. So while the various portfolio management and tax strategies can be really complicated, at the end of the day, it's all about allocating resources. And oftentimes it's allocating limited resources, obviously.
Yeah.
So difficult choices have to be made.
I introduced this show as the discussion as the great goals of life conversation. Why do you call it that?
Yeah, I guess a common theme that our listeners will pick up on, if they haven't already, is that I'm constantly reinforcing this idea that we're all created for a purpose, and that we've got these unique gifts and talents and so forth. And so the goal in our financial planning practice is to build custom financial plans that are unique to each client. That's why we've systemized almost everything we do so that we can focus on the custom planning, right? So it creates sort of a space for our advisors or our wealth managers to have these meaningful conversations. So having said that, many of us do have these common goals. So we're building these unique custom plans, but they're these major themes, these major goals. So what I call the great goals of life questions are just a good way to do 2 things. Number 1, it makes your clients understand that wealth management is much broader than just asset management. Oftentimes, individuals will come to our firm thinking that financial planning is investment management.
Yep.
Investment management is a very important subset of comprehensive planning or comprehensive wealth management. But investment management in and of itself is not planning, it's not financial planning, or is not. So that's the first thing. So these questions are a way to help people understand that a wealth management engagement is broader than just how to build an efficient portfolio.
Got
Number
it.
2, if you're like most people, some of these goals will resonate with you, and you'll get a sense of the value of financial planning, right? So you'll get a sense for these are things that we've always thought we needed to do, but we let them fall through the cracks because some of them aren't quite as exciting and interesting as building a modern portfolio theory or those kinds of things. So again, it does take complex financial planning down to some of these big elements and sort of the big rocks that we talked about before.
Well, what I love about the journey that we've been on is the first 2 episodes have really been high level about what matters most, about the heart, okay? And we're starting to get in with the head part and blending that together, which, again, I'll just remind you that the Money and Meaning Show is all about that. Highest level of excellence in your wealth management blended together with what you're really trying to pursue in life. So these questions that start to uncover that, where'd you get these questions?
Well, the other thing that I want this show to be about is to let us be a filter for the audience.
Oh, yes.
There's just a lot of data, a lot of information. And as I mentioned before, I'm passionate about learning these things. And so I just want the audience to benefit from some of the things that you and I have read or studied or learned about that we can share. And many years ago, I started working with a consultant to our industry named Nick Murray. And Nick is a great communicator. He's a terrific writer.
One of the best communicators.
He is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He is really phenomenal. And so years and years ago, he introduced these questions that he called the Great Goals of Life questions. And so I just adopted it in our practice. So that's really where they came from.
So when are they part of the overall client experience at Tandem Growth? I mean, when do you interject these questions?
Yeah, we ask these at the very first meeting.
Yeah.
But we don't ask them. We ask them rhetorically.
Okay.
So we're not looking for answers at this point of the engagement. They're really just there to educate a prospective client on the depth and breadth of the conversations that we're going to have later.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm trying to get this individual who believes that investment performance equals a successful life.
Investment performance matters. It's important, but it does not equal a successful life.
Correct. It's a means to an end.
And can you have both? And you would say, Jeff, because of what you've done, yes, you can.
Correct.
Absolutely. And that's what you should be pursuing. That's the real benchmark.
That exactly. So the idea here is we're trying to take individuals who may come into my office thinking that, again, investment management equals financial planning, to understand the depth and breadth of a conversation. If, in fact, they want holistic wealth management, they may not.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't want this level of engagement, we might not be the right firm. But I just forget about our firm for a moment and just think about these are just good questions for people to ask themselves.
Yeah.
So that's the context today.
Yeah.
But your question was, when do we use these in a client engagement? We use these early in a process just so people understand the depth and breadth of the work that we're going to work on together. And then obviously later in our process, if they become clients, we go deep on these questions.
Yeah. And we believe the same thing. I believe that everyone needs a relationship with a certified financial planner and someone to go through these questions with you and align your money with these purposes, these questions.
That's right. Agreed.
All right. So let's dive into these questions, Jeff.
Okay. So these are what I call the 6 great goals of life questions. And so the first one is, do you know what would happen to your family if either of you died tonight? So we're meeting typically with a couple.
Yep.
And that's a very uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
I mean, we would much rather dig right in to investment theory or how to build an efficient portfolio or, what's the market doing? I mean, clients would like to probably have that conversation too. But we ask them this uncomfortable question. So I believe that we're doing our clients and our audience is doing their families a terrible disservice if you don't ask yourself these questions.
So let me just let me repeat it, and you can always just flip back in the
Sure.
podcast. But let me repeat it. So the first question: do you know what will happen to your family if you pass away tonight? It's not, do you know what will happen to your investments or to your money? But that certainly is a component, right? Is that what people think about, or do they truly think about what will happen to my kids? Or
no, they again, these are rhetorical questions at this part of the process.
Okay.
But as our audience does, if our audience takes these questions and does them for themselves, they should answer the question.
Yeah.
And they should have clarity on the answers. And if they don't have clarity on the answers, they need help.
Yeah.
They either need to read a book, they need to go to a certified financial planner, they need to get an answer to this question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would actually put those in the reverse order. I'd see a financial
Correct.
planner first, because
I agree.
then there are usually, your answer will spark new questions.
Correct.
And then those answers will spark new questions as well. So let's move on. The second question in the Great Goals of Life conversation.
Yeah, so the second question is, do you have any kind of investment strategy for tripling your income during your retirement?
Wow.
And so if you don't have a rising income goal, in other words, if you have a fixed income strategy in a rising price world, you've got financial suicide on the installment basis. Mm-hmm. So really the goal in retirement is not income. The goal is a rising income, because if history is any guide, your cost of living is likely to double and possibly triple. The average 60-year-old couple who are retiring have a 30-year plus potential time horizon for one of them.
Yeah.
And so the goal here is, the question is really designed to be, are you confident that you have a rising income strategy as opposed to a fixed income strategy?
Yeah, that's
because
right.
the danger is that they're going to outlive their money, not because of short-term volatility, but because of rising prices over a 30-year period.
That is the greatest fear of those retiring right now. The
Running out of
greatest
money.
fear is
Yeah.
running out of money.
Right.
And I bet that question creates a little discomfort as well. How about the third question?
Yeah, the third question is, how would you want to use your extra capital, to the extent you have it, to intervene in the financial lives of your children, either while you're alive or legacies or both? So how would you like to influence your children with your resources? And again, this gets to it gets to some interesting discussion later.
Yeah.
And as the listeners if they evaluate this question, you have to ask your question, how much is enough? And everyone's got a philosophy. So the key is not that there's one right answer for everyone.
Right.
This is kind of what I was stating in a previous podcast about going into the engagement without my preconceived biases. What's important, though, is that the plan is authentic to your values and your beliefs. So whatever your values or beliefs are in terms of how much is enough for the next generation, we just want to make sure there's alignment
Yep.
between your plan and your values.
And again, this is rhetorical, but if you're listening right now and you think, well, I know what my answer would be, I'm not sure what my spouse's answer would be. Do they have to be the same?
Absolutely not.
And there again, having a certified financial planner talk to you about those differences, and I don't know, not find necessarily a compromise, but some common ground around your answer, maybe your spouse's answer.
Yeah, I mean the key is that both spouses are safe to share what they feel.
Absolutely.
And so you have to give them permission to disagree.
Yep.
Long as it's honest.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's a collaboration between the spouses as well. It's not just a collaboration with us and the household. It's also a collaboration because they may disagree and they may have to come to some middle ground on what's the right plan as a family.
Yeah.
That addresses both concerns.
But you've got to have it. I mean, this question and this next one that we're about to hear, I mean, there sparks some emotion as well. But if you're trying to build a plan and build a path forward financially without knowing these answers, avoiding the mess now is going to create more mess in the future.
Well, that's right. And it really just decides on what end of your life you want to be uncomfortable.
Yes, that's right.
You want to be uncomfortable today while I ask you these questions so we can solve problems? Or do you want to be uncomfortable later when one of these perils occur and you're unprepared?
All right. So question number 4. What's the next question?
Yeah. Will your children be able to give your grandchildren the kind of education you gave your children? Or, if you aren't a grandparent, are you planning to send your kids to college, and do you have plans to fund that? Mm-hmm. But many of our clients are sort of these mid to late career executives, and many of them have grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And as Nick Murray introduced these questions to me many years ago, I mean, he made them sort of pithy. He worded them in such a way where they're kind of clever.
Yeah.
So this idea of will your children be able to give your grandchildren the kind of education you gave your children, because it's different today. Yeah. I mean, college cost has grown so rapidly that many grandparents are really concerned about their children being able to give their grandchildren the same type of education they gave their children. So it's worded that way because, again, because when we do the questions that we did last month about some of these great goals of life, grandparents light up when they talk about their grandchildren.
Oh, absolutely. And want the best for them, right? At the very core, you want the best for them, and education can be such a critical component of
That's
that.
Right. That's exactly right.
All right. Next question.
Yeah, so the next question, so this is the one part of this dialogue that's not rhetorical. So I'll ask the client or the prospective client, are your parents living? And they'll say yes, no, or no. And if any of them are living, any set of the parents are living, the question is, do you expect to become financially responsible for them at some point? And if so, do you have a plan in place for funding that responsibility?
Yeah, tough.
It is tough. And again, because we do have a lot of individuals who are in midlife, who are trying to get their children out of college. Mm-hmm. They're trying to prepare for their own retirement or next phase of life outside of the corporate world, and they have parents that they need to support.
Yeah. Yeah. And folks, I mean, personally, I'm dealing with this in my life. And there again, I keep touching on the emotions here behind it. But there again, the entire Money and Meaning show is about addressing that left brain and right brain.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And so this gets to some really soft tissue there, but you got to address
Right.
it to
That's right.
appropriately handle your finances. Last question.
Yeah, the last question is there an institution that you or your family care deeply about, a church, a charity, a school, to which you'd like to leave a meaningful legacy if we could work out a highly tax-efficient, reasonable way to do it?
Is this rhetorical, or are you asking
No,
them
this
on-
is rhetorical. This
Okay.
is, at this stage of the process, it's rhetorical. Later, again, in a planning engagement, it's not. And because we will dig into that in a wealth management engagement. And again, I would encourage the listeners to think about it. Is there an institution, a cause, a charity, a church that you want to influence in a meaningful way? Because you do. We've all been blessed with resources, and we have a responsibility to be good stewards of those resources. So the idea here is, again, not to put on my bias, but just ask them their philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there you have it. Another great series of questions. And I tell you, if you take episode number 2, the questions introduced there, and combine them with the questions that we just went through today, you'll see a really deep level of what your rocks are, what your priorities are in life. So I want to thank you for joining us for the 3rd episode of Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier. Hope you found the time well spent and it helped you get a little bit deeper into what you're trying to do in your life. Jeff, any final comments before we sign off for today?
Yeah, I just really want to stress the importance of taking action, getting things in motion. I heard someone once say that knowing is to doing as 10 is to 1. In other words, knowing is fine, but if there's no action behind it, it's useless. So all real progress comes from taking action. So I just want to encourage the audience to take these questions and answer them for themselves, or engage a certified financial planner who does comprehensive planning to help them, to coach them, to guide them on some of these questions. And if they do, this awareness can be an excellent start in getting their actions and resources again in alignment with what matters most.
Very good. Excellent encouragement and challenge there. That is it for us today, folks. On behalf of Jeff Bernier, I am Mike Bernard. We'll see you next time for Money and Meaning with Jeff Bernier.
Thank you for listening to the Money and Meaning Show with Jeff Bernier, a show dedicated to help you gain the confidence and freedom to lead a life of personal significance and help you get your actions and resources in alignment with what matters most. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions for Jeff or Mike or comments on the show, feel free to reach out to us at moneyandmeaning@tandemgrowth.com, or you can find us on the web at www.tandemgrowth.com.